To be a really good entrepreneur, I think you have to take those circles and move them like this. And it's that sweet spot in between being creative and just being, executing. It's the person in the middle that can do both and get stuff done. That's really what an entrepreneur in my mind.
Welcome back to the Mark Faris Experience. I'm your host, Mark Faris. Today, we are going to be talking to Rick Schaly. Rick is the founder of Sports Medicine, and he founded this company in 1990, and he grew it to 5 locations with 65 healthcare professionals. He's nationwide. He's got Trainer's Choice, which he's basically has his hands in multiple businesses, and he's super successful. Rick, thanks for coming on the call here.
Mark, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited for today.
Yeah, no, looking forward to digging in. And maybe we could start with a little bit of your backstory there. I know it's interesting, right before we started here, we found out that we grew up just minutes away from each other. But, maybe you could share a little bit about your backstory and what got you into business and kind of the origin story, and then we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, my backstory's, I grew up as a country boy on a farm, and my dad had cash crop and beef cattle. And so I grew up on the farm, and I played a lot of sports growing up. And unfortunately, I was injured a lot. And so by the age of 16, I had 5 knee operations, but I was hardcore into every sport, whether it was baseball, rugby, hockey, and my family was hockey centered. So I really had a passion for hockey, but I spent a lot of time in physiotherapy and physiotherapy clinic in Barrie. And so when you grow up in a farm, you go, okay, well, am I going to take my dad's farm over? And you kind of go, well, no. And, it's hard work, but, the outcome in terms of pay is low in some cases. And so I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? And I had a neighbor that ran a very successful machine shop. And so I said, am I going to be a machinist? Am I going to be a millwright? And so in high school, I did those co-ops, and it didn't really sit well with me. And so I'm sitting in physiotherapy one day after surgery, and I'm saying to myself, what am I going to do? And, I'm looking around the physiotherapy clinic, and there's other athletes in there, and they've been banged up in sports, and they got sprained, knees and ankles and this and that. And it sort of dawned on me, hey, I wonder if I could open a clinic that just served athletes. And so I started down this path, and I realized that my path for being a machinist was different. And so I had to make up a bunch of programs and courses, and I had to really kind of backtrack to move forwards. And so over time, I applied to a program at Sheridan College, which was the first of its kind for athletic therapy. And it's the only program it's the first program that started this program just to treat athletic injuries. And so it took me a little bit to get in, and I finally got in. And I was one of these lucky guys. And, I talked to a lot of people that wonder, like, what was your vision? But I went into this program knowing what I wanted to do. I wanted to open a clinic. I had this in my brain. And I said, I'm also going to have braces, because when I was injured after the surgeries, I always wore a brace. And I was a goalie. And so, getting up and down, and I needed a brace. And so I had this niche thought that couldn't I have a clinic, sport injury clinic, and bracing? And so I went into the day one saying, this is what I'm going to do. So I had this clear vision in my mind. And I don't know if I was blessed from God to have this, or it just was osmosis, but I was very clear. And so after 2 years, I graduated. I was the first student to have a job. I ended on Friday at school. I started Monday at a clinic in Toronto, and it just kind of went on from there. And so I was fortunate to start my own clinic about a year after that in Angus, and then it just kind of exploded. It was Angus, and then Collingwood, and then Barrie, and then a second Barrie, and then it was Huntsville, and over time. We opened in Aurelia as well, and so that's how it evolved. And through that, I was fortunate to start another company called Trainer's Choice, and that company is I'm quite proud today, the number one brand at pharmacy retail for brace.
Wow. Okay. So I just want to like unpack that and then
Yeah,
before we move on here,
yeah,
Rick. So you took what most people would basically look at themselves as like this victim story that, I'm injured. What am I going to do? And you actually made that and created a Victor story is what I like to call, and you flipped it and you made it your life's mission to basically because you were being like you were in rehab and you saw that and you basically you doubled down on that. That is, man, that like that there's such an opportunity, I think, for those that are listening, is you might be going against some major struggles or have some sort of, maybe like some would look at it like some negative aspect of your life, but you can actually flip that and turn that into a passion. And the cool thing is, Rick, you probably connect and at a deeper level with the athletes because you were them back in the day and you made something from it. So you can probably connect at a much deeper level than somebody just saying, yeah, I want to get into rehab. Would you agree with that?
I agree for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, just curious, when you had this like vision or this, was it like a moment where you're like, oh, like this is what I want, and then you were like, had this like definite chief aim from that moment, or did it slowly kind of turn into this vision of what you wanted to do after talking with a few people?
Well, I think it percolated because, as every Canadian kid, I wanted to be a hockey player. And then, it became obvious I wasn't going to be a hockey player. And then, um, you start searching for, if I can't be a hockey player, what could I be to be in pro sports? And, another thing that I did, and we can talk about this later, was, I started to referee for cash as a 15-year-old. And that evolved to eventually refereeing in the OHL. And, I was offered a contract during the strike and all kinds of stuff. But, I had business plans that were bigger than refereeing. Um, but back to being that high school student, it was, okay, if I can't get there as a pro athlete, how do I get there? And then so, with this injury issue I had, it was like, well, why don't I help athletes? And maybe I could work, with a team. And so it just kind of percolated where then, I always had a business background. So when I was a teenager, I had a little maintenance company that I operated. So we did odd jobs coming
Yeah.
up, growing up on a farm. I, fixed things and we learned how to work. That was for sure. So we're always doing odd jobs. And then
Yeah.
me and a buddy rented a farm and we had our own cows and we started our own cash crop business. We did that for about 3 years and I was only 16 years old, 17 years old. And so I was just sort of born with this business chip that I wanted to be in business. And so back to the athletic therapy, it was like, okay, well, I can make a business out of athletic therapy versus working for a team. I want to run my own show. And I've always been a little headstrong wanting to run my own show. So that's how the business circulated.
So you had kind of that in your blood, and then you saw one thing after another, and then it built into something that was like, okay, I'm going full out
Yeah.
in this. It's so interesting. Our backgrounds are so similar because, grew up a couple minutes from each other, both of us on a farm, and then we both played hockey. I was drafted to the Erie Otters, so I didn't actually. Before the first exhibition game, I ended up transitioning to Junior A. But the point there is, after that, I was playing as I was playing like junior. I was working at a machine shop, and I took the 2-year Georgian College tool and die making, where I was doing machining, and then from there I kept playing hockey, and then I transitioned to real estate. But there was like a moment with real estate where I was like, yeah, like I don't want to keep playing hockey. I want to get into and learn more about real estate investing and selling it. So it's crazy. That's why I asked, like, was it a moment or was it, because sometimes it's like, so for example, my son, he comes to me one day, this was 2 years ago. And so he was about 12, he's 15 now, so 13. he came to me, he said, "Hey Dad," he's like, "Can you train me?" He's like, "Can you like wake up at 5 a.m. with me and train me?" Like he never worked out at all, he's not super athletic. And he came to me 2 years ago and he had this like desire in his eyes, like just like it was this light bulb moment. I'm like, oh, and I saw it, I caught on. I'm like, okay, like let's sit down to your goals. And for 5 months, I only had to wake him up once or twice. Maybe the alarm clock didn't go off or whatever, power went off or whatever, but he was always there every single day. I never had to wake him up for like 5 months. And then now he's blown up. He's benching 265, squatting 350. And he's like, it's great. But the point there is like, he had this like desire that was built in. And that's why I love your story. Cause there was like this, that's like the beginning of all of like big achievement is, and like a rocket ship is this definite chief aim or this strong desire. And sometimes it kind of percolates into something and sometimes it's in a moment as well. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, that's it's great. I think that when I crystallized what I wanted to do, I was just all in on it, and
Yeah.
I was like a dog in a bone. There was nothing going to stop me. And one of the fires I have in my life, I was told by a lot of people that I couldn't do it. I couldn't do this, couldn't do that. I couldn't start a clinic as an athletic therapist. You're a farm kid. You can't run a business. You know, there's a lot of, you'll never have that. You'll never do this. And even people in my, class, it was always, well, oh, that nobody's ever done that before. And so I was somewhat of a maverick in our industry. And, I turned a lot of heads because, I'm kind of jumping ahead on you here, but when I went into clinics, they were sleepy. There was no customer service component, and it was like a sterile environment. And I had, physiotherapy in different places, and they were all it was like I'm sitting there saying, well, if I'm treating athletes, I want a positive environment. I want an upbeat environment. I want it, so these athletes are coming to get better. They want to be here and they want to get better and they want to drive the process. And so, simple things like one thing that would drive me crazy, and if I just start at the beginning, would be, okay, well, I call for an appointment. I got to wait a week to get in. Well, I'm injured. I want to play my sport. I want to play hockey. I don't want to wait a week. I want to get better now. And it was just simple things of getting people in right away and, creating a plan where they get treatment, but then they get rehab. So the strength and conditioning part of it. And, the other thing I saw was there was no marketing, right? There was, and Mark, I got to give you kudos because, you're one of the best marketers I've seen. And, I was the first clinic to have a TV commercial. I was the first clinic to bring chiropractic in with physiotherapy and athletic therapy. That had never been done. I was told by doctors and friends, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
Right.
But I was convinced that, I'm running a physiotherapy, athletic therapy clinic, and 50% of the people have back injuries, and they're all going down the road to a chiropractor. So, I'm sitting there, well, why wouldn't we have our own chiropractors? And so meshing the professions back then was somewhat taboo, but I just believed in it. If you got the right people with the right philosophy, it would work. And we did it. There was very little pushback, and it just took off. And so my concept was then, let's make a one-stop facility where, you have chiros, you have massage therapists, you have athletic therapists, you have physiotherapists, you have naturopaths. And then I evolved to having sport med doctors and then orthopedic surgeons. And so, we created a center of excellence, a center for treatment. And when people came in there, instead of sending them out, we kept them in house, and it was all about conversation. It was all about communication. It was all about, if you can have a chiro and a physio working on you, and that gets you better 2, 3, 4 weeks faster, are you going to come back? 100%. You're going to tell 10 of your friends. And so, we had tremendous success because of it.
It's genius. It's so smart and it's customer centric and focused. It reminds me a lot of Jeff Bezos there. He talks about that. Like he's got a relentless focus on the client. And so it's interesting. I was listening to this. There's so much I want to unpack about what you just said. There's genius in that. But when he said this, which ties in really well, he said, a lot of people ask me what's going to change, what's going to be different in 10 years. He's like, he's like, a better question is to ask what's going to stay the same. He's like, a great customer service, fast service, all the things for Amazon for him. He's like, that's not going to change. He's going to bet on that. So he's like, we're going to double down on those things. And for you, you're doubling down like on culture, which is when people come in, like you want to make a great experience and you wanted to make it like convenient, and you looked at their problem and you wanted to solve it all in house instead of, because it's not super convenient. It's like, yeah, I'm going to come to you for physio and then send me down the street to the chiro. So you were filtering your decision through the client's eyes versus what the industry told you should do. But then it was interesting because you had courage to do it because people were telling you couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So like all these little pieces all added up to you delivering, and then you exploded.
I think, there was risk with what I did for sure. But, part of it's math where the numbers are in your favor because, so many people, chiropractic's a great profession. Why wouldn't you have it? And you just had to convince people, you had to provide a model and a conduit that they saw that would work together and that two different professionals could work together. Like you can drive through any city now and it's mainstream and that's all over the place. But when I did it, it's probably 25 years ago, it was like, holy smokes, what are you doing? This is earth. And it worked out great. And it's, the other thing is you got to get the right people. So getting professionals that are willing to collaborate, willing to communicate, willing to do what's best for the patient and not what's best, for them. And, if you're a sole proprietor working down the street, well, you want to keep patients. And the reason you keep them is they pay your livelihood, right?
Yeah.
In our environment, it was, we're so successful with this abundance of patients. Let's do what's right for the client. So you don't have to worry about keeping him longer or not communicating, not referring him on to somebody else, because just the environment and the culture we have, it's about the client. And if you lose that client, it's going to be replaced with a referral from somebody else internally. And so you create this teamwork and this environment where everybody's working together and people, drive energy off each other when, the one thing, so I worked in the clinic for the first couple of years. There's nothing better as a clinician when somebody gets better and they're so happy. Right.
Right.
And, when you can help somebody get back to play football or hockey or whatever it is, and they're so thankful for that, it's a boost of energy. And so the more people are getting better, everybody's getting this boost of energy because it's a positive place.
Yeah. For sure. And those what comes with those are the best referrals because they go tell their entire teams like, you got to go talk to Rick. Yeah, right. He looked after me.
A staggering number, Mark. When we had five clinics, we were up to 6,500 referrals a year. That's staggering.
It's huge. That's massive. How would you even control, or how would you look after that many referrals? Like, is there a process for intake of referrals? And do you go back to the people that referred? I mean, how do you even track that? I'm curious on how you 6,500, like, how did you handle all those referrals coming in?
Well, you track it at the admin and it's tracked when they come in. When I first started, 90% of the referrals were from a doctor. But I still own a clinic in Aurelia. It's actually flipped. It's about 10% of referrals. The rest are direct access because the laws changed where you didn't need a doctor referral. But we track, where everybody comes from and where they sent from a friend. And did they see, did you see a sign? Did you see a commercial? Whatever it might be. So we track it that way. But you really need a strong admin team, and it's got to be a team because one of the things I always said was the first step in the clinic can be lasting, right? So if you walk in and you don't have a smiling face, you don't have a hello, once they get to know you, hopefully the admin remembers the name and how are you today, Mark? And it just starts this whole process. You got to remember, people are injured. They don't want to be there. They want to be doing other things. So you got to make the intake positive as much as possible. And then, the communication right from day one with the practitioner. And, I always spend a lot of time with my practitioners telling them, spend time with the client, show them what's wrong, get models out, get pictures out, demonstrate what's wrong, show them so they understand, and then they can help participate in the rehab. But they don't, typically they wouldn't get all that information from their family doctor. Family doctors are just too busy. And so, to be able to be educated on what the injury is, people really respond to that. And then the most important part is the plan. How are we going to get you better? And so, not just saying what's wrong, this is how we're going to get you. And that's, really critical, because then they say, okay, well, how long is it going to take? And, so you set some parameters. Well, if we do this, we can get, this time frame. If it, we always said treat more and discharge sooner. The old philosophy is once a week for 12 weeks. Well, why does somebody want to be injured for 12 weeks and not playing their sport? Why not treat them 3 times a week and discharge them in 4 weeks, right? So that's the way my attitude was. Let's be aggressive in the clinic. Let's treat people. Let's get them. Yeah. And so an athletic therapy background, if some of my colleagues work in the CFL, and so, big football players would be injured. And I said, how many times would you treat them a week? And they go, a week. We treat them 2 or 3 times a day, right? A day.
Right.
And so, because these are professional athletes, and whether it's from Toronto Maple Leafs or whatever, and it depends on the injury. So not everything's the same, but basically the point there is they're aggressive. Professional athletes, they work hard, they get a lot of treatment, and hopefully they get back to play as quickly as possible. And so I brought that model to what we did in the clinics.
Which would have been a shakeup, right? Because you had said it was like almost like treadmill is what the industry was. So I could see how your referrals would have shot through the roof when you came in with that mindset, customer service, and filtering everything through. How can we make this better for the client? I love it. I'm not surprised that you blew up. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit, Rick, because there's a lot of listeners out there that are like, okay, you found early what you wanted to do. You found kind of your passion or your mission in life. There are some listeners out there that's like, I want to be successful, but they just haven't found that passion. They haven't found like a mission, or even sometimes it's like, if they're younger, I haven't found something that I can really sink my heart into. What advice would you give that entrepreneur that, they want to do something, but they just don't have that vision perhaps yet?
Say, what are you good at? Right. So you got to kind of find out what's my skill set? What am I good at? Or what am I interested in? What can I learn? And then it's just, I don't have an exact answer, but you got to, try different things. It was like you and I, you tried machine shop. I tried welding, machine shop, and it didn't work. So you cut bait. You say, I don't think this is for me. Let's try something different. And so I don't think it's easy per se, but you try a few different things and you try to find an interest or a skill that you have. And I did a lot of digging to say, okay, well, is there such a program as athletic therapy? So it just didn't bounce out. You have to do a little digging. You have to do some research. And I think people, if they put time into it, and sometimes it's not going to come quickly. Sometimes it's going to take time. But I think if you're diligent, something will come.
Yeah, I love that. It's great advice. Like, you got to take action and do something, because I think a lot of people, they just kind of sit back and kind of take the thing that comes along, and then they kind of do that, and they say, I'd love to do it, but I just don't know yet. It's like, you just got to take action on something. And it's funny.
Don't sit on the couch.
Right. Great advice. I mean, just get out and start moving, because sometimes your destiny or your passion or your mission is around the corner. But unless you go kind of, down the road a little bit in another direction, you won't see it, right? Maybe there's an introduction. I've heard this before where there's one of my buddies growing up, he was a server, and he was a server at a high-end restaurant. The restaurant guests came in and they were sitting down for a meal and he was serving them. He's like, well, would you like to get into mortgages? And then he got into mortgages and did really well. And then he got into real estate, and then kind of it moved on and he ended up finding investing and all the rest of it. But the point there is that he took action and he showed up as the server at the beginning.
And talk to people, and it created relationships. Like relate to me, relationships drive everything. The more relationships you have, the more advice you're going to have, the more mentors, but opportunities. So opportunities will drop in your lap by having a strong network. It just works that way.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've heard, Rick, where there's a business owner that they do really well and they're really good at it, but it's not their passion per se. And their passion is maybe it's like fishing, but fishing won't support their lifestyle that they have. So their business is actually supporting their passion. Right. And so they double down and they do well on the business side of it. But, the point there is that's not perhaps his quote unquote passion. For him, it's building his business in a way that he can take time off to go do his passion, which is fishing. Right. So I want to go back to, and that was just a great piece of advice there, because I know not everybody has that blessing per se of like, oh, this is it. This is where I'm going towards, and you can double down, but it will come. You'll figure it out if you just take action. I think that's great advice. Now, when you said that you were coming in and there was a different culture you wanted to implement into the business. So you wanted like speed, they didn't want to wait a week. For example, were there any like core values or fundamentals that you implement in the business that you wanted to like repeat over and over? Were there anything in stone, or was it just you kind of repeating customer service kind of over and over, here all the things and giving examples, or were there like actual formal core values that you established within your company?
Well, I'll give you one that focused on, and that was I went on a course, and in this course, a 5 out of 5 rating is optimal when, whether it's a Google review or Amazon review or a review. There's a lot of data around, okay, so generally speaking, if you get 3 out of 5, what's the chance of that person coming back to your facility? The answer is 10%. If you get 4 out of 5, the answer is 20%. And the next answer is what's shocking. So, if you get 100 on your test in math or school, you think that's pretty darn good, right? So I'm going, okay, well, if you get 5 out of 5, the chances of them coming back is 100, but it's not. It's 80%. So 20% of the people will still go somewhere else, even if you're 5 out of 5. And that might be convenience. That might be, somebody says, try these guys. Could be a, wide list of reasons. But what was stunning to me is that it's only 80%. So you could be 5 out of 5 on the scale and still not get that person back. So my motto become, well, let's be a 6.
I love that.
So throughout the business and everything we do today, we say be a 6. So be better than good, be great. And so everything we do, whether, it's on the product side, let's have great products. Let's have great customer service. Let's have great clinicians. Everything we do has to be a 6. And we promote it. We talk about it. We celebrate it and talk about it in weekly meetings. Who's a 6 this week? What happened? And it's, that's to me is what drove the culture, be a 6. And people really love doing it. When they get a 6 and they get rewarded and celebrated, plus, the people obviously in front of them are happy.
Oh, it's memorable. It's short enough. It's memorable. It makes sense. It's exciting. It's a challenge. It's fantastic. I could see how that would really stick and resonate probably with the right people. I bet, Rick, that probably, that attracts the right people, and it probably repels people that just don't want to go the extra mile, I would think as well. Is that true?
And so the truth is that not everybody fits that model. And the truth is that
right.
No matter what you do, some people are just not on board with that plan. So, this is a tough conversation, but those people shouldn't be on the bus. So if you
Mm.
identify people that aren't your culture, you have to make tough decisions. And that's the hardest part of being in business, that, you have to cut bait on those people. Otherwise it drags down everybody else in the facility. So, you know, in an optimal world, you want everybody on the bus to be, screaming, let's be a six. And you gotta cull the people that aren't on board.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's so good.
Yeah.
Now, you oversee many, many people, built a multi-million dollar business. You have to make a lot of tough decisions. The people is like one of them, right? So, are there any like principles, or is there anything that helps you make quality decisions on an ongoing basis? Is there anything that maybe you filter them through these decisions to be able to get quality on the other side of these tough calls you got to make?
So a model I moved to was, instead of having a small management team, I made my management team and my inputs bigger. And so instead of me making all the decisions and maybe one or two other people, so clinically speaking, we would have two or three people from each facility, and we would get their feedback on each decision. And we'd have issues within the business, and is it our pay grid? Is it holiday time? Is it how we book our holiday time? And so we get feedback from everybody, and it's great just to sit back and listen. So they come up with the issue and say, okay, well, how would you solve it? And then, they throw out an idea, and sometimes the idea was good, but, most of the time we had thought about the idea, but there's always logistics, there's always hitches, there's always a yin to the yang. And so you throw out, well, we could do this, but this is going to happen. And so you go through all those things. And one thing it did was, people realize that decisions aren't always easily made. We would get feedback on how we could be better and make a better decision. And we would build consensus within the group to say, yeah, this is the right path. And then those people would go back into the facilities and drive the message so that the communication was better from management, ownership, and back into the facility. And so that really helped with decision making. And we really worked. I mean, we have a CPA from the number side, and have some business advisors. So one of the big tough decisions, we try to get as much input as we can. And if I'm going to change direction for a second, we do this in our Trainer's Choice business too. So when we want to innovate, we say, okay, what kind of product do we need? What's the problem? What are we trying to solve? And then I'll bring in an orthopedic surgeon, a sport med doc, a kinesiologist, physiotherapist, a couple athletic therapists, and we all sit in a room and we say, well, how can we make this better? How can we make this brace more functional? What are the downfalls of what we have, and how could we improve it? What's our competition doing? And, that's how we're the number one brand in Canada right now at mass retail pharmacy. And so, you don't get there by having cruddy products. And so, we're always innovating. We're always trying to improve, and, getting feedback from a wide range of people, I think, is really important. I actually had one of my senior sales people tell me my style was team leadership. And so empowering each person on my team to drive, their role and responsibility. Yeah, as a group, we make decisions together. So I learned that was an evolution for me, that halfway through I realized that, at the time I had 5 really big clinics. I had Trainer's Choice, which, a significant national company. Mind and Muscle is a training facility. We built 100,000 square foot medical building. I'm the managing partner at Ortho Health. A lot of decisions need to be made, and that I realized that if I'm making all these decisions, it's going to be a lot of mistakes,
Yeah.
because the scope is so big, the range is so big, and yet you got all these assets within your facility. Why not use them? So my style has been a team approach versus top down. And I think it's been a real critical difference maker for me.
I love that. I love how you get all the right minds in the room and you ask great questions. And then I also love, so like one of those are, how can we make this better? What's the problem? What are we trying to solve for? So good. And then you get the right key people in that room, and then you bat it out, right? I'm sure you have some healthy debate back and forth, and it might be like Steve Jobs where it's like heated debate, and that's actually a good thing.
The best thing is sorry to jump in there. The best thing when there's no obvious solution going into it, but after debating it and getting feedback from several different people, so you start here and you end up here after going here, 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 and here. And then because of all these inputs, it creates, ideas and more conversation. Well, what if we tried this? Well, that's a bad idea. But then what if we did this? And it just keeps rolling. And then that's how you solve big issues, is just, not having a predetermined outcome and letting feedback, letting expertise, and letting opinions percolate in a room. And I love whiteboards. I actually hate Zoom because I can't get on my whiteboard. So I love drawing and making arrows and, drawing words. So that's me. That's my creative style.
I would think that you need abundance of trust with the people in the room for people to be open to give their feedback, right? Where they know they're not going to be slammed by you. The owner's in the room. He's going to, if I say something stupid, he's going to hammer me over the head. I'm sure you've built in a lot of trust with them where they can feel open to give feedback. Is that what you find? Trust is a big part of those conversations?
Well, if you break the trust, Mark, you might as well not have the meetings, because you'll never get ideas, right? So you have to be supportive. You have to appreciate every idea, every thought. You might be thinking, wow, that wasn't really significant, but maybe that idea wasn't, but the next one they bring is. So you got to be able to be, they want your support. They want your admiration. They want your praise. And I think when you create that environment where people can be heard, people want to have a say. And I think it's great you provide that forum so that they can bring their ideas, because, often people have ideas and you've never thought of it. So it's actually counter, intuitive and for the business if you don't bring the ideas from the floor. Like some of the best ideas are like, I don't treat patients every day. I don't fit braces every day. We're actually working with our admin team saying, okay, what calls are you getting? What complaints are you getting? What returns have we had? And if you don't ask those questions, you're going to miss it, because at the top, you think everything's great, right? You look at your financials, everything's great, but you could be cracks developing because you're not paying attention with the people that can tell you. So I think it's important to be listening to your whole team.
Oh man, there's so much gold here, guys. For those of you that are listening, there's real genius if you really go back and listen to what, especially, listening to your clients and what are the front lines people saying, what kind of complaints are coming in. Because you're right. I mean, especially when you start getting into multiple layers, that's one thing that our leadership team, they have to actually call a client at least one every week. And then we combine that feedback on a weekly meeting and we debate and talk about that. Like, what are clients saying and what are team members saying? And we're gathering, collecting, and then actioning on that. But there's real smart to doing that, because like you said, you get like the CEOs and the presidents and they're up in their high tower, right? And they just don't see it. And maybe it doesn't show in today's numbers, but it will show next year's numbers type thing, right? So it's really good.
Philosophy, Mark, sorry to jump on there, is I tried to create a culture where everybody was even. Doesn't matter what your role is. We respect, like we got people in the warehouse, and man, if we don't have good warehouse people, we're not shipping on time. Our goal is 99.9% delivery on time. And so how do you do that if you don't respect your people, and if you don't, provide a environment for those people to be successful? So every cog is critical, and you got to appreciate every cog that they do and maximize it. And so, not to not to continue to drive that home, but your people are your business, especially, physiotherapy, chiropractic, athletic therapy, massage, sport med, whatever you want to classify it. Those people are your business. So you need, so, and it, it doesn't matter. We have a strength and conditioning business called Mind to Muscle. The coaches are the business, right? So you need the best coaches, and, and so it doesn't matter, what business it is, you need the best people.
Yeah,
I
love
can go on rants forever about trying to find the best people. And
that.
one little tidbit is find the right person. And if they're short on skills, you can build skills. But if you start with the person with the right core DNA, where they're honest, they're hardworking, they're respectful, they want to be on the team, then you can build skills. I mean, they need a basic set of skills, but you can build skills. You can't build, in my experience, you can't build the person. They either are that way or not.
Yeah, I love that. So honest, hardworking, and you want to be there.
Yeah.
That would be like a prerequisite foundational piece that you look for when you hire people. Yeah. Okay. So multi-million dollar businesses, you have 65 healthcare professionals, multiple clinics. What if you were to say like this habit or routine is something that I do on a regular basis, whether it's daily or weekly, has helped me, build the business or maybe just helped your quality of life. What would you say would be like a regular routine or habit that you do that's helped you accomplish all of this?
I went to this course called the Strategic Coach. Dan Sullivan was the founder, and I learned so many key things. Not to get off on a tangent, but one of the things that was really, really critical for me, at least, is one of his concepts is focus on the biggest check. And so let's say I'm working on a big deal and 3 small deals. Well, his philosophy is focus on the big deal first, because the small deals take as much energy and as much time to close as the big deals. So whatever you do, come in and work on your biggest goal, your biggest check, your biggest revenue generator, and then work backwards from there. The other thing that I learned is have free days, which is rest and recovery days. That could be midweek, that could be weekends, that could be 2 weeks holidays. But if you're always tapped out, if you're always burned out, if you're always kind of low on energy, you can't think and solve problems as well as if you're rested. And then you have execution days. So those days, so there's two types of days. There's buffer days where you do all the little things. So answer emails, all the little projects that you have to do. There's certain things in a day that you have to get done so the rest of the team can do their work too. So those are buffer days. And then the third type of day is your action day. So those are the days that you focus. They call them focus days on your biggest check, or your RFPs that we're working on, or, if we're developing a new product, what needs to be done. So put my time into those key biggest check projects, and then give those projects as much time and good energy as you can. And then it's way more successful.
Yeah, such great advice. Keep the main thing the main thing. Focus on the number one constraint. What is that big thing? And I love that. Focus on the biggest check. It makes sense, right?
Yeah. It's not rocket. When you pay a lot of money to be at these courses, and it's go, oh yeah, I should have known that. And I spend a lot of time on weekly goals, quarterly goals, yearly goals, and I think everything drives down and kind of folds into, what's your planning, what's your goals, and you have your buffer day, your focus day, and then your energy days.
That's so great. And again, consistency with goals. I mean, this comes up with almost all top producers, top business people. Goals is like a regular part of their lives, and they focus on that. But as the leader, it's really important that unless you focus your team on the biggest check, like you had just said, they'll work on all the small things, sometimes even more, because maybe it's more urgent, but but is not more important, right? So they'll work on the smaller things first, but you got this bigger thing that they should be actually working on. Maybe it's because it's not as loud. So that's your main job as the main leader, right? Is to keep the main thing, and say, hey, like, guys, this is the mission. Here's where we're going. Like, this is what's most important. And what I found is that nobody else is really thinking like that. So I think what you had said there, take some kind of off days and focus. Are we allocating our resources in the right areas that's going to bring the most return? Would you agree with that? It's like you're like as the main person, you got to keep everybody focused on what those are, or at least give the right tools to make those decisions.
Yeah, 100%. And then a word I use a lot is execution. So we can create things, we can have ideas, we can innovate, but if you don't execute, it's you have to get the work done and you have to execute on your plans. So if you have great plans and you don't execute, I always call it, so you need creative people in your business. I'm typically the creative person. And so I'm sure you know lots of people that come up with great ideas. Oh, I should open a McDonald's. I should do this. I should start this business. But they never do anything. You need the person that's creative. And if I was drawing a circle, I'd blend two circles together. And so you have an execution people. There's people that can execute but can't create. And so to be a really good entrepreneur, I think you have to take those circles and move them like this. And it's that sweet spot in between being creative and just being, executing. It's the person in the middle that can do both and get stuff done. That's really what an entrepreneur, in my mind, a good entrepreneur can thrive on, as being that little slice of those two circles that blend.
It's so smart, Rick. So, okay, so the entrepreneurs listening, they're listening to the show, they start implementing a lot of these lessons that you're teaching here today, and they start making income. So they, save a reserve, they make sure they get a, debt, as much as possible, and they have excess funds. They've saved for taxes, and it's like, okay, where do they invest? I mean, there's just so many things you can invest in today. I mean, we have a real estate investment firm that we have to go through 200 different apartment opportunities before we find one. And so we have this whole filtering mechanism on how we do that. But because we do, and we have that discipline, we're able to pretty much double our investors' money in 5 years. And the point there is that to help the listeners overcome, or to be able to give them maybe some decision filters to be able to take that money and invest it well, what advice would you give entrepreneurs when it comes to investing their money?
I think it depends on what stage they're in. When you're growing as an entrepreneur, cash flow is king. And I think, I had some lessons early too, where you're expanding too quickly. The business is good, but the cash flow is not there. So it's cash flow management. And having the right advisors early is really, really important. When an entrepreneur gets a little bit more mature in their business and they have cash, then I wouldn't want to say that I'm an investing expert. What I tend to be more risky on my business and be conservative on my investing, because I don't want to be risky. Like, business is risky. Like, you never know what's coming down the pipe. You try to plan for it. You don't know what's around the corner. COVID, like, we had to shut down for 100 days in COVID. That was a scary time. So you don't know what's coming. So I tend to be very conservative. Real estate, as you say, is such a great investment. The best investment I ever had and did. I sold it about 3 years ago. It was the 100,000 square foot medical building. And that turned out to be the best thing I ever did. And so you need a good advisor. And so my recommendation, if you're an entrepreneur, be a little bit more cautious on your investing. Depends where you are in your business cycle, right? So I'm a little bit later in my life right now versus the younger guy that, just be conservative and make sure you're getting good returns. But take the risk in your business. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So yeah, because business is more risky, be more conservative, and real estate sounds like has you've done well in that. What would you say would be the biggest investing challenge that you're facing today in today's market? Is there something that is just a little tougher to navigate now? Like what would be the biggest challenge for you?
Well, interest rates are going up and down, right? So, when interest rates are high, you could,
Yeah.
throw your cash in an, interest account. And, I think I was almost getting 6%, right? Doing nothing, right? With zero risk. But, interest rates are dropping. And so it's always finding that sweet spot where you're five, between 5 and 10. And, if you're hitting 7, you know, those aren't home runs or singles, but it's safe and, takes you 8, 10 years to double your money. So, um, but there's a lot of uh, bad things that come along and they sound good. And, so that, you got to be careful on what you do and have good advice and a good team around you. And, fortunate, I've been fortunate to build a really strong team around me. And so I'm a little bit conservative, which is odd for this conversation because I'm, in my business life, I've taken a lot of risks and been a bit of a maverick, but in my investing, I'm more cautious because, you have a nest egg and you want to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. So, I don't know if I was helpful in that, but that's the way I think about it.
No, that's really great insight. And the goal here is to get inside your mind for entrepreneurs is like, okay, somebody's further down the road than me. How are they thinking right now? And so I think that it makes a lot of sense. So that was perfect. So Rick, I could talk to you for like seriously, I could talk hours because I only got I sent you some questions ahead of time. I don't even think I got to any, to maybe like one or two of them, just because they're so interesting. I had to go down a couple of different pathways, but we are to the point where we get into the rapid fire part of this. If you're ready to go, I can ask you a few questions here, and then we can wrap it up. You
Sure.
ready?
Hit me.
All right. So first question is, which book has had the biggest impact on your business or perhaps your wealth creation overall?
Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. So, it just kind of pushes that concept of good isn't good enough, right? So people think, well, I'm good, I do a good job, but no, you got to be great. How can we be better? And so I love that. I mean, it just hits everything that I think about who I am. So Jim Collins has a lot of good books. I'd recommend any of his stuff. I saw him live at an innovation forum in New York. Great speaker.
Yeah, I would call him as one of perhaps the godfathers of business building, right? One of the things after I read that book was building a strong leadership team. And once I read that, I started, and it was like a game changer for me. So that's such a great, that's a foundational business book. That's great. Next question is, how would others describe you in 3 words? So 3 different words, people that know you best, how would they describe you?
Um, I hope innovative, humble, and driven.
That's a good mix right there. Innovative, humble, and driven. Perfect. Okay. No, that's what I see as well. And then uh, final question here: what advice would you give your younger self if you had any like overarching advice to say, either your younger self or maybe a new entrepreneur that's getting into business for themselves. So either way you want to take it, what would that advice be?
I think when I started, I charged ahead really, really fast. And if I did it again, I would have taken my time a little bit more and had more advice and more advisors. Um, and that's a good accountant and a good lawyer. And I had lawyers and accountants. And just a quick story. I know we're out of time, but so I joined Rotary. I was in Rotary for about 7 years, and I met so many good entrepreneurs and professionals. And what I learned is an accountant isn't an accountant, and a lawyer isn't a lawyer. You need the right kind of lawyer that does corporate work, and you need an accountant that understands corporations and what you're trying to do. Not your tax return kind of stuff. And so, in hindsight, it was like I was behind the curve, and it took me 3, 4, 5 years to get the right team and the right people. And all those people are still with me today. But it was through mentorship of some of the people that I met in Rotary and some business leaders in my community. And so if I have advice, is just get the right people behind you, make sure that they're experts in the field that, you're working in, and hopefully that gets you on the right path sooner.
That's such great advice. That I haven't heard that one in a little bit from our listeners, and to build your team up. And so you had said for yourself, you joined a Rotary, and then from there you had other successful people share their contacts. Is that how you'd recommend the listeners to build that up? Maybe they don't know anybody. Is like a Rotary. Are there any other groups that you'd recommend for them to join?
Well, Rotary is fantastic because it puts money back in the community. It raises money, but it's also professionals. And so it was a natural for me. But whatever your industry is, try to get involved, try to go to trade shows, try to, serve on executives, try to be in think tanks, try to, whatever your industry there is, like in real estate, there must be, all kinds of boards and construction organizations, and Barrie Chamber is fantastic. Barrie Chamber is an easy resource, or any chamber, wherever you are across the country, chambers are fantastic. But, you got to surround yourself with successful people. So, this is probably the last point here, but if you want to be successful, hang around successful people, meet successful people, and opportunities come your way. You learn things. It's just, that's the way life works.
No, that's great. So how can the listeners, maybe, they're they're living in maybe the GTA or, North, what would be the best way that they can reach out, maybe find one of your clinics, and to drive, what would be the best way that they can check you out? Is there a website that they can check out sports medicine, or, your other business Trainer's Choice?
Trainer's Choice is probably, we're coast to coast. So if you walk into Shoppers Drug Mart or Loblaws or wherever you are across the country, we're in 95% of all pharmacies. So our brand's there, but you can go to our website and send an email to our info, and I'd be happy to get back and chat with anybody that wants advice. Certainly very open. You can also contact me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and send me a note, and happy to chat with anybody that wants to chat.
That's great. Well, Rick, really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming out here. It was such a wealth of wisdom, and definitely not surprised of all the crazy success you've had in business building, but just overall, just being a good human being. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Mark, this was fun, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, right on. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to the show. If you liked it, please share and subscribe to the channel, where we're building a community of up-and-coming entrepreneurs. Just remember, the fastest way to build wealth is to grow your business and invest into real estate. I love you guys.